I thought my graduation dinner would be about celebrating my degree, but instead it became the night my own family tried to destroy me in front of strangers until someone unexpected stood up and changed everything. My name is Zara Belmont, and I'm 22 years old. 3 years ago, I was just another teenage statistic, pregnant, abandoned, and supposedly destined for nothing. Tonight, I'm wearing the first new dress I've bought in 2 years, a simple black number that cost me 3 weeks of grocery money, but I wanted to look perfect for this moment. My 3-year-old daughter, Ivy, is pressed against my hip, her tiny fingers clutching the fabric of my dress as she takes in the fancy restaurant around us. Her dark curls are pulled back with a ribbon that matches her pink dress, the one my mom bought her specifically for tonight. This is supposed to be my victory dinner. I just graduated summa cum laude with a degree in educational psychology, something I never thought would happen when I was 17 and throwing up every morning while trying to finish high school. My parents, Keith and Nora Belmont, are sitting across from me, pride finally replacing the disappointment that lived in their eyes for so long. They've been my anchor through everything, even when they didn't understand my choices. But tonight isn't just about me. It's also about my cousin, Celeste Morrison, the golden child who graduated law school the same week I finished my undergraduate degree. She's sitting 3 seats down from me, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the restaurant lights, designer dress probably costing more than I make in a month at the daycare where I work. Celeste has always been everything I wasn't. Planned, perfect, praised. Uncle Fletcher, Celeste's father and my dad's brother, keeps making toasts about both our successful girls, but his eyes linger longer on Celeste when he speaks. Aunt Delphine nods along, occasionally glancing at Ivy with that look I've grown accustomed to, half sympathy, half judgment. The extended family fills 3 tables at Belmore's, this upscale place with cloth napkins and waiters who refill your water glass before you even notice it's empty. I can feel the familiar knot in my stomach, the one that appears whenever I'm around family. Even on my best day, I'm still the cautionary tale. I'm still the girl who threw her life away at 19. But tonight feels different because I have something real to celebrate. I have proof that their whispered conversations about my wasted potential were wrong. Ivy tugs on my dress and whispers, "Mama, why is everyone so dressed up?" Her innocent question cuts through my anxiety for a moment. I lean down to her level, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Because tonight is special, baby. Tonight is about celebrating how hard Mama worked in school. She nods solemnly, not fully understanding, but sensing the importance. This dinner was supposed to be about showing everyone that I'd made it despite everything, that being a teenage mother didn't define my limits, it defined my determination. But as I look around the table, watching Celeste accept congratulations with her practiced smile, I can feel the undercurrent of comparison that's always existed between us. Tonight, I'm hoping it will finally shift in my favor. I'm hoping that my family will see me as more than just a mistake that worked out okay. I have no idea that in less than an hour, my own cousin will try to humiliate me in front of a room full of strangers, or that a man I barely know will stand up and change not just this night, but how I see myself forever. Looking back, I can see how naive I was to think one graduation ceremony could erase 3 years of being the family disappointment. But sitting in that restaurant, watching Ivy color on the kids' menu with crayons the waiter brought her, I genuinely believed tonight would be different. Let me tell you how I got here. Because understanding my journey makes what happens next even more important. When I was 19, I thought I had my life figured out. I was dating Tristan Walsh, this charming guy from my community college who talked about our future like it was already written in stone. We'd get married after graduation, he'd finish his business degree, I'd become a teacher, and we'd live happily ever after in some suburban house with a white picket fence. Then I got pregnant. I remember the exact moment everything changed. I was sitting in the campus parking lot staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test when Tristan pulled into the space next to me. I showed him the test with shaking hands, expecting surprise, maybe fear, but ultimately support. Instead, he looked at me like I just told him I had a terminal illness. "This isn't part of the plan, Zara," he said, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "I'm not ready to be a father. I have goals." As if I didn't have goals too, as if my dreams suddenly mattered less because I was the one carrying his child. By the time I was 7 months pregnant, Tristan had transferred to a university 3 states away. He left me a note, not even the courtesy of a conversation. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this. You'll be a great mom without me." 22 words to end what I thought was the love of my life. Moving back in with my parents was humbling in ways I'm still processing. Mom and Dad never said, "I told you so," but I could see it in their eyes during those first few weeks. Mom would make extra portions of dinner without asking if I was hungry. Dad would come home with baby items he claimed were on sale, though I knew he was buying them at full price. They loved me, but they were disappointed, and that disappointment felt heavier than their anger would have been. Ivy was born on a Tuesday. I held her for the first time while snow fell outside the hospital window, and I made her a promise that I've never broken. "I'm going to make sure you're proud of me," I whispered into her tiny ear. "I'm going to show you that being strong runs in our family." The next 3 years were the hardest of my life. I'd wake up at 4 in the morning to study while Ivy slept, surviving on coffee and determination. My textbooks were covered in crayon marks because she'd crawl into my lap while I read. I took exams with baby food stains on my shirt and wrote essays during her nap time. Other students in my program would complain about not having enough time to study, and I'd bite my tongue, thinking about how I'd kill for their problems. Money was always tight. I worked part-time at Sunshine Daycare, which was perfect because I could bring Ivy with me, but the pay barely covered our expenses. We qualified for food stamps, WIC, and Medicaid. Every month, I'd use those benefits with a mixture of gratitude and shame, especially when I'd run into people from high school at the grocery store. Their eyes would move from my face to the benefits card in my hand, and I could practically hear them thinking, "There goes Zara Belmont, exactly where we thought she'd end up." But here's what they didn't see. They didn't see me tutoring other struggling students for free because I remembered what it felt like to feel stupid. They didn't see me organizing study groups that included pizza for students who couldn't afford to eat. They didn't see me writing grant proposals at midnight, trying to secure funding for a campus childcare program because I knew other student parents were struggling just like me. My professors noticed, though. Dr. Whitmore, especially. He never treated me differently because I was a young mother. When other students made comments about how unfair it was that I got deadline extensions for sick child emergencies, he'd shut them down quickly. "Miss Belmont works harder than any of you," he'd say. "She's earned every accommodation she receives." That support kept me going through the worst moments, like when Ivy got pneumonia during finals week of my junior year and I studied in her hospital room, or when my car broke down and we had to take 3 buses to get to campus for my thesis defense, or when Celeste would post pictures of her law school parties on social media while I was at home, reading case studies and wiping runny noses. The day I graduated summa cum laude, I cried. Not just because I'd accomplished something I'd dreamed of, but because I'd proven to myself that being a young mother didn't mean settling for less. It meant working harder for more. Now, sitting in this expensive restaurant, I thought my family finally understood that too. I thought tonight would be about celebrating how far I'd come, not relitigating how far I'd fallen. I was wrong. The evening started beautifully, which made what came next hurt even more. Dad stood up first, raising his wine glass with the kind of pride I'd been waiting years to see. "To both our girls," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Zara and Celeste, you've both worked so hard to get where you are today. We're incredibly proud of you both." Everyone applauded, and for a moment I felt like I belonged. Ivy clapped her tiny hands together, not understanding why, but caught up in the excitement. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand, whispering, "You did it, sweetheart. You really did it." But as the salad course arrived, I noticed Celeste's mood shifting. She'd been drinking wine steadily since we sat down, and there was something sharp in her smile that I recognized from childhood. It was the look she got when she felt like she wasn't getting enough attention, the same expression she'd worn at my high school graduation when I got an unexpected academic award. "So Zara," Celeste said, her voice carrying across the table, "it must be nice to finally finish college. Better late than never, right?" The comment stung, but I kept my smile. I'm just grateful I got the chance to finish. Not everyone gets to take the traditional path. Traditional path? Celeste repeated with a laugh that didn't sound friendly. Is that what we're calling it now? I suppose having a baby in college is becoming pretty traditional these days. Uncle Fletcher cleared his throat uncomfortably. Celeste, that's enough. But she wasn't done. As the main course was served, she kept making little comments that felt like paper cuts. When the waiter asked if Ivy needed a high chair, Celeste said, "It's so cute that you bring her everywhere. I can't imagine trying to study with a toddler around. Must be so distracting." When Mom mentioned my acceptance into the master's program, Celeste nodded enthusiastically. That's amazing. I'm sure they have great programs for non-traditional students. You know, older students, parents, people who need extra support. Each comment was carefully crafted to sound supportive while actually diminishing my achievements. I felt my confidence from earlier in the evening starting to crumble. Ivy sensed my tension and climbed into my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Mama, are you sad?" she whispered. "No, baby, I'm fine," I lied, kissing the top of her head. Other relatives began joining in, not maliciously, but with that particular brand of family thoughtlessness that cuts deepest. Aunt Delphine sighed dramatically. "Such a shame you had to take the hard road, Zara." But look how it worked out in the end. Cousin Marcus, Uncle Fletcher's brother, nodded sagely. It's inspiring, really. Shows that even when you make mistakes, you can still turn things around. Mistakes. The word hung in the air like smoke. I looked down at Ivy, this beautiful, intelligent, funny little girl who was supposedly my biggest mistake, and felt my throat tighten. "She's not a mistake," I said quietly, but my voice was lost in the din of conversation. Celeste leaned forward, her eyes bright with wine and something uglier. "Oh, we all know Ivy is a blessing. That's not what anyone's saying. We're just acknowledging that you had to overcome a lot to get here. Teen pregnancy, abandonment, welfare dependency. It's actually pretty remarkable that you managed to graduate at all." The table went quiet. I could feel other diners glancing our way, drawn by the tension in Celeste's voice. Dad looked mortified, but he didn't speak up. Mom's face had gone pale, but she stayed silent too. This was Celeste, the family success story, and nobody wanted to make waves. "I worked hard," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "just like you did." "Of course you did," Celeste said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But let's be honest, we had very different challenges. You got pregnant and had to make the best of it. I made good choices from the beginning." My hands were shaking now. Ivy felt it and looked up at me with worried eyes. I should have left then. I should have taken my daughter and walked out with whatever dignity I had left. Instead, I sat there, frozen by a lifetime of trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth defending. The dessert course arrived, and I watched numbly as the waiter set down a chocolate cake with "Congratulations, graduates," written in elegant script. Celeste stood up, swaying slightly, and picked up her wine glass. "I want to make a toast," she announced, her voice carrying across not just our table, but the surrounding ones as well. "To my dear cousin Zara." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I knew that smile. I knew exactly what was coming, but I was powerless to stop it. "I'm just so glad I'm not a complete failure like her. Pregnant at 19, dumped by 20, living off welfare. Thank God I made better choices." The silence after Celeste's toast was deafening. Every eye in our section of the restaurant was on me, some filled with pity, others with curiosity, all of them making me feel like a specimen under a microscope. The laughter from my family members felt like acid in my ears. Uncle Fletcher was chuckling uncomfortably. Aunt Delphine had her hand over her mouth, trying to hide her smile. Even some of my cousins were snickering behind their napkins. But it was my parents' reaction that broke my heart. Dad was staring at his plate, his face red with embarrassment. Mom's eyes were wide with shock, but she wasn't defending me. She was looking around the restaurant, clearly mortified that other people had heard Celeste's words. In that moment, I realized they weren't ashamed of Celeste for what she'd said. They were ashamed of me for being the kind of person someone could say it about. Ivy tightened her grip around my neck. "Mama, why is everyone laughing?" she whispered, her voice small and confused. That question shattered something inside me. My 3-year-old daughter shouldn't have to witness her mother being humiliated by her own family. She shouldn't have to see the people who were supposed to love us most treat us like we were less than human. I stood up so quickly, my chair scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through the uncomfortable laughter. My hands were shaking as I gathered my purse and reached for Ivy's little jacket. I couldn't stay here another second. I couldn't subject my daughter to this, and I couldn't subject myself to watching my family's true feelings about us play out in public. "Come on, baby," I whispered to Ivy, lifting her from her chair. "We're going home." But as I turned to leave, preparing to walk past the gauntlet of relatives who had just watched me get torn apart without saying a word, something unexpected happened. A man at the table next to ours stood up. He was probably in his 50s, distinguished looking, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a navy blazer and moved with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to commanding attention. His wife, an elegant woman with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, was looking up at him with an expression of pride and determination. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to speaking to large groups. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help but overhear, and I believe you're talking about one of my students." The entire restaurant section went dead silent. Celeste, who had been basking in the aftermath of her cruel toast, suddenly looked like she'd been slapped. Her face drained of color, and she slowly sank back into her chair. The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly. I recognized him immediately, though seeing him here in this context felt surreal. Dr. Holden Whitmore, my favorite professor and thesis advisor, the man who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, the professor who had written recommendation letters that opened doors I never thought I could walk through. "Dr. Whitmore," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded at me with a gentle smile, then turned his attention back to my family. His wife had stood up beside him now, her face set with the same quiet determination. I realized they had been celebrating their anniversary at the table next to ours, probably enjoying a quiet dinner until my family's dysfunction spilled over into their evening. "I'm Dr. Holden Whitmore, professor of educational psychology at State University," he continued, his voice carrying to every corner of our section. "And the young woman you just described as a failure is one of the most remarkable students I've encountered in 25 years of teaching." My heart stopped. This couldn't be happening. My professor was about to defend me to my family, people who had known me my entire life but had never really seen me. The irony wasn't lost on me that a man I'd known for less than 2 years understood my worth better than relatives I'd grown up with. Celeste tried to salvage the situation. "Oh, we're just family, you know how it is. We tease each other, it's all in good fun." Dr. Whitmore's expression didn't soften. "Calling someone a failure in public doesn't sound like teasing to me. It sounds like cruelty." The weight of his words settled over our table like a heavy blanket. I could see my parents exchanging glances, suddenly aware that their silence during Celeste's attack looked as bad as her words. Uncle Fletcher was shifting uncomfortably in his seat, probably wondering how to distance himself from his daughter's behavior. I was still holding Ivy, still preparing to leave, but now I found myself frozen in place. This moment could go one of two ways. Either Dr. Whitmore would make some polite comment about being a dedicated student and then sit back down, leaving me to slink away with whatever dignity I could muster, or something bigger was about to happen. Looking at the steel in his eyes and the proud way his wife stood beside him, I realized I was about to find out just how much my professor truly thought of me. And for the first time all evening, I decided to stay and see what unfolded. Dr. Whitmore stepped closer to our table, his presence commanding the attention of everyone within earshot. Other diners had stopped their conversations, sensing that something significant was happening. His wife remained standing beside their table, her arms crossed, watching with the fierce protectiveness of someone who had probably heard him talk about his exceptional students for years. "Zara Belmont is not a failure," Dr. Whitmore began, his voice carrying the same authority he used in lecture halls. "She is one of the most remarkable students I've encountered in 25 years of teaching. While juggling single motherhood, she maintained a 3.97 GPA, completed an honors thesis on educational equity that is being published in the Journal of Educational Psychology, and received a full scholarship for her master's degree." Celeste's mouth fell open. The wine glass in her hand trembled so badly I thought she might drop it. Around our table, relatives who had been laughing moments before now looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with each other and with me. But Dr. Whitmore wasn't finished. The young woman you just mocked has tutored struggling students for free every semester, organized a campus food pantry specifically for student parents, and wrote a grant proposal that secured $50,000 in funding for on-campus childcare services. She did all of this while working part-time and raising a child alone. My throat was tight with emotion. Ivy was looking up at me with wide eyes, not understanding the words but sensing their importance. "Mama, is the nice man talking about you?" she whispered. "Yes, baby," I managed to say, my voice cracking. Dr. Whitmore heard her and smiled gently at Ivy before turning back to address my family with renewed intensity. "The welfare you're mocking so casually helped her become the kind of person who lifts others up instead of tearing them down. Those benefits allowed her to focus on her studies and her daughter, instead of working 3 jobs just to survive. She used that support to transform not just her own life, but the lives of countless other students." Dad finally looked up from his plate, his face flushed with shame. Mom's eyes were filling with tears. Though whether from pride or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. Uncle Fletcher was staring at Celeste like he'd never seen her before. "Furthermore," Dr. Whitmore continued, "Zara starts her master's program next month with a full teaching assistantship. She's already been conditionally accepted into our doctoral program with guaranteed funding for all 5 years. Her research proposal on educational barriers for young parents has caught the attention of the Department of Education. In 5 years, she'll be Dr. Belmont. And based on what I've witnessed here tonight, she'll be a far better human being than some people in this room." The silence that followed was profound. I could hear the clink of silverware from other tables, the quiet murmur of conversations that had resumed after the drama at our table. But among my family, no one spoke. No one moved. Then something beautiful happened. The elderly couple at the table behind us began to clap. The sound was soft at first, just 2 people showing their appreciation for what they'd witnessed. But it spread like ripples on water. The family with teenage daughters at the corner table joined in. The business dinner across the aisle. Soon our entire section of the restaurant was applauding. Ivy's face lit up with delight. "Mama, they're clapping for you, just like at my dance recital." Tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. I wasn't crying from humiliation anymore. I was crying from relief, from validation, from the overwhelming feeling of being truly seen and valued by someone whose opinion mattered. Dr. Whitmore's wife stood up and walked over to us. "You should be very proud," she said quietly, reaching out to touch Ivy's hand. "Your mama is pretty amazing." "I know," Ivy said seriously. "She reads me stories and makes the best pancakes, and she's really smart." Dr. Whitmore chuckled. "She certainly is." Celeste finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't realize that you had accomplished so much." The apology felt hollow. Too little and too late. But Dr. Whitmore wasn't done addressing her. "Miss Morrison, you graduated from law school, which is an impressive achievement, but achievements mean nothing if you use them to diminish others instead of lifting them up. Your cousin has shown more character and determination in the past 3 years than many people show in a lifetime. Perhaps you should consider what kind of lawyer you want to be. One who tears people down, or one who fights for people like Zara, who overcome impossible odds." Celeste's face crumpled. She set down her wine glass with shaking hands and looked directly at me for the first time all evening. "Zara, I'm so sorry. I was jealous. I've always been jealous of how strong you are." Around the table, other family members began to speak up. Dad stood and walked around to my chair, placing his hands on my shoulders. "We should have defended you. We should have stopped this before it started. We're so proud of who you've become." Dr. Whitmore nodded approvingly. That's exactly what she deserves to hear. After the applause died down, Dr. Whitmore approached me directly. His wife had returned to their table, but was still watching with warm eyes. "Zara," he said quietly, so only I could hear, "never let anyone dim your light. You've already overcome more challenges than most people face in a lifetime. What happened here tonight says everything about their character and nothing about yours." I shifted Ivy to my other hip and extended my hand to shake his, but he surprised me by giving me a brief, fatherly hug instead. "Thank you," I whispered. "You have no idea what this means to me." "Actually, I think I do," he replied. "I've seen too many brilliant students doubt themselves because of other people's narrow definitions of success. You're going to change lives, Zara. Never forget that." As Dr. Whitmore returned to his anniversary dinner, my family slowly began to process what had just happened. Dad was the first to approach me, his eyes red with unshed tears. "Sweetheart, I am so sorry. We should have defended you immediately. We should have shut this down the moment Celeste started making those comments. We were cowards, and you deserved better from us." Mom joined him, wrapping both Ivy and me in a tight embrace. "I've been so proud of you every single day, but I've been terrible at showing it. I was so worried about what other people thought that I forgot to focus on what really mattered. You're an incredible mother and an incredible woman." The conversation with my parents felt like a weight lifting off my chest. For 3 years, I'd carried the burden of feeling like I'd disappointed them, like I was their biggest regret. Learning that their silence came from their own insecurities rather than shame about me changed everything. Celeste approached cautiously, looking younger and more vulnerable than I'd seen her since we were children. "Zara, I need you to know that everything I said tonight came from my own fears and jealousy. You've always been braver than me. When we were kids, you'd try anything, stand up to anyone, chase every dream. I've spent my whole life following a safe, predictable path because I was terrified of failing." She took a shaky breath before continuing. "When you got pregnant, part of me was relieved because it meant I wasn't the family screw-up anymore. But watching you rebuild your life, watching you succeed despite everything, it made me realize that I've never really been tested. I've never had to fight for anything. Tonight, I was trying to tear you down because your strength makes my accomplishments feel hollow." Her apology felt genuine, in a way that surprised me. "Celeste, you don't have to diminish yourself to build me up. We can both be successful. We can both be proud of what we've achieved." "I know that now," she said. "And I want you to know that I'm going to do better. I'm going to be the cousin you deserve and the role model Ivy deserves." As we prepared to leave the restaurant, other diners continued to approach me. The elderly couple who had started the applause pressed a business card into my hand. "Our grandson is a single father in college," the woman explained. "Would you mind if I gave him your contact information? I think he could use a mentor like you." The family with teenage daughters stopped by our table as we gathered our things. "We heard everything," the mother said. "Thank you for showing our girls that there's more than one way to build a successful life. They needed to see that strength comes in many forms." Even the restaurant manager came by, offering to comp our entire meal. "What happened here tonight was beautiful," he said. "It's rare to see someone stand up for what's right the way that professor did. And it's even rarer to see someone handle grace under pressure the way you did." 3 years later, I walked across the stage to receive my PhD in educational psychology. Dr. Whitmore was there as my dissertation advisor, beaming with pride as he hooded me. In the audience, Ivy held a sign she'd made herself. "That's my mommy, doctor. Belmont." Next to her sat my parents, Uncle Fletcher, Aunt Delphine, and Celeste, who had driven 4 hours to be there. Celeste had kept her promise about becoming a better person. She'd started volunteering with a legal aid clinic that helped young mothers navigate custody and support issues. She'd also become one of Ivy's favorite relatives, the cool aunt who taught her about standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. That graduation dinner taught me that our worst moments can become our greatest strengths when we refuse to let other people's limited vision define our worth. It taught me that there are people in this world who will see our value even when our own family doesn't. Most importantly, it taught me that defending ourselves isn't selfish. It's necessary, especially when we're modeling strength for the next generation. Today, I'm Dr. Zara Belmont, and I make sure every student parent in my classes knows they're not alone. I share my story not for sympathy, but to show them that their current chapter isn't their final chapter. Success doesn't always look like what other people expect, and that's perfectly fine. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me about a time when someone unexpected stood up for you, or when you had to find the courage to stand up for yourself. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Remember, you are not your circumstances. You are your response to them.